Anarchists don't want the government. They reject all government and all governing authorities. Our example of our anarchist is Bakunin. I think this is how you spell it. He's our prominent anarchist that runs around. Bakunin. He's a Russian anarchist, runs around, quite prominent, and argues that the government needs to be overthrown. Another example of the anarchists are those people that the People's Will, which is a populist group or an anarchist group in Russia that assassinates Alexander II, who had emancipated the serfs. And another example of the anarchist group and a nationalist group is the Black Hand, the Serbian nationalist group. They were anarchists as well. In the late 1800s, in the late 19th century, we see anarchists assassinating McKinley, the President of the United States, here, and assassinating political leaders elsewhere. And their theory is that you assassinate some leaders and the government will topple. And this will allow freedom. Because, as Rousseau puts it, man is free, but everywhere he's in chains, and those chains are those of the government. Those chains are those that restrict peasants. Those chains are those that protect the rights of the rich. Syndicalism is another variant of sort of this idea of social chain, of workers rising up. And syndicalism, which is postulated by George Sorel in France, in which there's a strong unionist movement. Syndicalism is the idea that there will be a general strike, and a general strike is when all the unions go out on strike together. And the result is that because all the unions will go on strike together, the government won't be able to do anything. If the government doesn't do anything, it doesn't have power. And the unions now have power. So the unions will replace the government. Syndicalism. Okay? A general strike, all the unions go on strike, and so the unions have power because the government is helpless to stop it.
So a syndicate is a union?
A syndicate is sort of any sort of group of people working to do something. Right? We see syndicates to describe Mussolini's economy in the 1930s, in which he organizes all the people of certain mining into a syndicate and into different groups, into different areas of the economy, factory workers or factories that are producing certain things into different syndicates. So yes, it's that idea of sort of a group of people that are doing some common activity. Yeah.
So to what extent are Mussolini's syndicates a fulfillment of syndicalism?
Oh, none at all, because Mussolini, the government, controls them completely.
Okay.
Not this is Mussolini. Syndicalism argues that the unions will take over and be in charge because the government won't have power, and that's not what happens with Mussolini. Okay, and unionism, labor. Just know there's expansion of labor movements in the second half of the 19th century, dramatic expansion. And so this is where syndicalism comes from, like this idea of syndicates, of the unions working together. And so we see, for example, in Britain, a good example is the Labour Party, which will be a new political party that represents the labor unions. And this Labour Party will be the Socialist Party, more or less, in Britain. And it will attract the interests of workers by proposing that if it is elected, it will put in place laws that will help them, that will help redistribute property and make things more socially equal. So unions will have a big role as we go forward. For example, the unions, a union strike or workers' strike in St. Petersburg or Petrograd in 1917 is what sets off the March 1917 Russian Revolution against Nicholas II. So governments will have to respond to unions as they go on strike. And often those responses will be accommodating the union's demands to some degree. demands for shorter hours, demands for vacations, demands for better working conditions, things like this. Now, in the 20th century, liberalism is transformed. Liberals in the 20th century begin to see that they're being squeezed by, on the far left, these communists and these socialists who want to end private property and create social equality. And on the right, they're squeezed by these more conservatives, these radicals, and later the fascists. And so liberals want to appeal to the masses. And they do this in the 20th century by welfare state programs. And the welfare state programs that we'll see liberals implementing are programs for the poor, health, so aid for the poor, health care for the elderly, and after World War II, health care for everyone in Europe. And other welfare state programs, unemployment insurance for people that are injured or for people that are laid off from work, or workers' compensation for people that are hurt on the job. So liberalism will change, and in America today, liberalism stands for people that want the government to do more welfare state programs. And in America today, the term conservative has shifted as well. Conservatives in America today are those people that advocate more the classical liberal philosophy that the government plays a minimal role and focuses on protecting individual rights. So you can say that American conservatives are classic liberals in their view of what the government should do. However, conservatives also still maintain more social conservative ideas, like religion. They tend to be more religious, and therefore in support of more culturally conservative things, like family and marriage.